Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. It's apple season, and today we're cooking up some old-fashioned apple butter. Well, God has blessed us with like 4 apple trees in the yard. We planted all kinds of trees when we moved here. When we moved, this was an old farm, and it was just a big field. It had been for cows and stuff, and every apple tree I planted grew, and not only that, I planted 2 that were supposed to be crab apples, and they are not. They get these big, beautiful, delicious apples on them. And this year's been kind of a strange year for apple trees, or for apples, because of the weather we have had. We have had a lot of rain and then no rain. And we had some late cold weather. And my golden delicious apples didn't do too good. And the crab apple tree up in the front yard, that's not really a crab apple tree, it didn't do so good. But this old wine sap tree here, it is really, really loaded. And even though the weather has been strange and some of the apples are split and stuff, these make some really tasty, rich apple butter. So these trees are completely organic. I don't spray them at all. And so you do have to kind of look at what you pick, and you have to cut them up in some reasonably small pieces. Make sure you've got all the protein out. But like I said, they make some really good apple butter, really good apple pies, good homemade apple sauce. Well, I've about got my bag full of apples here, so let's go in and make some apple butter. To make apple butter, you want 8 to 10 pounds of apples. I weighed my apples after I cut them up, and I had about 7.5 pounds. So an 8 to 10 pound bag of apples, if you buy them, is about what you're going to need. Now, you can peel your apples for apple butter, or you can leave the peel on them. It doesn't matter, because this is going to cook for about 8 hours. And to get that real old-fashioned apple butter, you do have to cook it 8 to 10 hours. I don't care what recipe you use. If you don't cook it that long, it's not going to have that dark, rich, thick flavor and texture. There are a lot of recipes out there that apple butter in an hour and a half. That just is not going to give you old-fashioned apple butter. And so if you're worried about pesticides on the apples that you buy, definitely peel them. You don't necessarily have to cut them up in pieces this small. You do want to core them. And all you really need to do is core them, wash them, cut them up, and put them in your pot. You need of course, some spices in apple butter. It is spicy, and the amount of sugar you use in your apple butter is going to depend a lot on what type of apples that you use. My apples are wine sap apples. And wine saps are a crisp, sour apple. They're kind of tart. If you're using a Granny Smith or a Macintosh or something like that, you're probably not going to want as much sugar. But it is still going to take some sugar. So anyway, the first thing you need is you need some salt. And I'm starting with 2 teaspoons of salt. Now all these spices, once the apple butter is cooked, we're going to taste it and adjust them. I've got about a teaspoon of cloves. I've got a teaspoon and a half or so of nutmeg here. And I've got about a tablespoon of vanilla. The vanilla is really important in the flavor. It gives it like a full flavor, and it kind of blends everything together. And I've got about a tablespoon of cinnamon. And I will probably add more of all of this once it's cooked, but I want to taste it and see what the apples taste like after they're cooked. And every kind of apple and even every pot of applesauce or apple butter is going to come out different. They're just going to be at different stages of ripeness. Every apple variety, of course, is flavored different, so you are going to want to adjust those. I'm starting with about a pound of brown sugar, which is about 2 cups, and about 2 cups of granulated sugar. If you're using a sweeter apple, you might want to start with a little less sugar. But I'm probably going to have to add more sugar to this after it's cooked and I taste it. And you have to have a little liquid, about a cup of liquid. I have some apple cider here. You can use apple juice. You can use grape juice even. You can use water if you don't have any juice. You could use concentrated apple juice if you didn't want to add as much refined sugar. That would add a little sweetness to it without doing the refined sugar. But that's basically it. And you want to cook this for 8 hours. Now you can cook this in a programmable pot like this. You can cook it in a crock pot, just a regular old-fashioned crock pot. You can cook it on the stove. If you cook it on the stove, you're going to have to stir it probably every 30 minutes to an hour to keep it from burning in the bottom. A crock pot, you might want to stir it a few times. It depends on what kind of crock pot you have. You might be able to put it in a crock pot and turn it on and let it cook overnight and then process it in the morning when you get up. This pot, you can definitely put it in, turn it on, and let it cook overnight and then finish it up in the morning. Because I'm going to seal this pot up and I'm not going to touch mine again for 8 hours. But we want to stir this up, kind of mix the spices in it, and this is the only time I'm going to stir this until it's cooked. Now, cooking apple butter used to be like a community project. People would get together at the church or somewhere like that, and they had big kettles. They would build a fire and cook it outside. It would be an all-day thing. The men would all keep wood chopped and keep the fire going, and the women would take turns stirring the apple butter, and everybody would catch up, sit around and talk all day long. They would probably have a potluck dinner there while they were cooking it. And like I said, it was really an all-day thing, and it was a community event. And everybody would take home some apple butter after they were done. It is an all-day job, but with pots like this one and crock pots, you don't necessarily have to spend all day stirring it like you used to have to do. But because we're not stirring it, because we're going to let it sit there and cook, when it gets done, we're going to have some way to mash it up. Now, if you were stirring this for 8 hours, by the time it got done, it would be smooth and creamy. When we get ready to finish it up, we're going to have a mixer or a food processor or something to blend it up and make it smooth. If you cook yours on the stove, though, and you stir it several times through the day, you're not going to have to do that. Alright. Now, with this kind of a pot, this programmable pot, I have my seal in, I have all my, I've got this set on sealing, because even though I'm going to turn this on slow cooker, and it will build up enough pressure to seal. And that will help my apples cook even. It will hold all of my juice and all of my flavor in, and it will make my apple butter better. And this is a Simpot. It's similar to the Instant Pot. Most people are really familiar with an Instant Pot now. Even if you don't have one, you've heard about them. The manufacturers of Simpot sent me 2 of these. And we're going to give one of them away on September the 5th, which is my mom's birthday. That's the same day that we are also giving away the vacuum sealer. So to register to win a Simpot just like this one, you need to comment on this video. Just start your comment with Simpot apple butter. And you can leave up to 10 comments. You can leave anything else in the comments that you would like. You do need to subscribe to our channel to win, and we would greatly appreciate it if you would share the video as well. But let me tell you a little bit about the Simpot while I'm turning it on here. To start it, you just push the center button, and that turns it on. And that's, well, you push it and turn it just a little bit. I'm sorry. Push the center button, give it a little turn. You can see it has a timer on it. This pot has a few things that the Instant Pot does not have. One of the things it has is adjustable pressure. And in my opinion, that makes it much safer and more efficient and easier to use. If you have ever witnessed a pressure cooker explosion, I guarantee you remember it even if you were a very small child. I used Instant Pots at yesteryear for almost 2 years in a commercial setting, and it turned off on me. Let me get this set. To cook the apple butter, we want to slow cooker it on high. So I'm going to push the temperature button so that it goes up to high, and I'm going to select slow cooker, and I want to change the time from 4 hours to 8 hours, and I do that just by turning the little knob. I give it a push and that selects it, and that will select my time, and now it's preheating. Okay. I wanted to go through all the cycles, and that's why I didn't set it to start with, but it's going to keep beeping at me. Right now, I'm on slow cooker, on high, and it's heating up. That's what the little squirrely line there means. But this one has adjustable pressure on it, which is something that an Instant Pot does not have. Now, when I was at yesteryear, and I would use this to like make potato salad or something in it, it would take as long to vent the pressure off as it took to cook the food. And you don't always have that much time, especially if you're trying to cook something in a hurry. It would just take forever because everything was cooked under high pressure. And when this apple butter is done, you will see that how the low pressure setting works. It'll literally just take us a minute, maybe less, to vent once the apple butter is done, because it will seal at a very low pressure, and it will hold that pressure and cook the food at that pressure. The Instant Pot, like I said, everything is high pressure, and if you've got it full of water to the full mark, it takes a good 15 minutes to vent it. If you turn, and it'll blow steam all the way to the ceiling. If you turn it off and just let it sit there and let the pressure go down, it will take it over 30 minutes to release the pot, if you don't want to vent it and blow steam all the way up to the ceiling. So the pressure setting on this is a big deal. Another thing I like about this Simpot is the lid on it. The lid on the Instant Pot, it just has a little handle back here, or up here actually, and you have to reach across the steam vent to get your hand into the lid to lift it up. I don't like that, and I got burned on those at yesteryear several times reaching over that steam vent. I also got burned just on the metal part of the lid. This one here, most of the top of the lid is covered in plastic. It's got this nice wide handle that you can grip. You don't have to reach across your steam vent to get your hand in it. You can come from this side, which is really nice, but it's hard to touch these metal parts on the lid. That's not the case with the Instant Pot. I can't tell you how many times I bumped them and got burned, how many times I got burned on that steam vent, just because of the way it's made, and because it's always under such high pressure. The steam vents for so long. Another thing that this Simpot has that the Instant Pots don't have it unless they have changed them. The ones we were using were about 2 years old, and they might have changed them, I don't know. But this has a yogurt cycle. So you can actually culture yogurt and things like that in the pot. And I want to give that a try pretty soon. I have not tried the yogurt cycle yet. But you can cook anything in this that you can cook in a pressure cooker. You can cook anything in this that you can cook in a crock pot. And it does have that yogurt cycle, which will keep the low temperature for hours and hours and hours. You can steam vegetables in it. It has a saute cycle, so you can actually fry in it. And we're going to use this pot to actually process our apple butter and can it in the next video. So in the next video, we'll give you some basics of water bath canning, which is a simpler method of canning. I'm not going to pressure can it, but I am going to water bath can it. That's all you have to do to apple butter. You don't have to pressurize it. Like I said, Simpot did give this to us, and they gave us another one to give away. That is our only affiliation with them. We don't get any kind of commission or anything off the sales. And I will put a link in the description of this video where you can order a Simpot on Amazon. I do like it much better than the Instant Pot just because of the handle and because of the pressure settings. Now, like I said, I haven't tried out that yogurt cycle yet, but I want to. Anyway, I think it's preheated that quick. It's already up to temperature. And in 8 hours, we're going to come back and take the lid off and finish up our apple butter. It's literally that simple. Now, if you're cooking this on the stove, you're going to be going and give it in a stir every 30 minutes to an hour. You do want to cook it with a lid on it. Or you can put it in a crock pot. Like I said, if you've got a regular crock pot, it will cook just fine in that too. So we'll see you in 8 hours. Welcome back. Our apple butter's been cooking all day, and I can smell it. It smells really, really good. Before we take the lid off of it, though, I do want to show you what comes with this Simpot. It has a rice paddle, a soup ladle, a strainer basket, a little measuring cup. Something it has that I really wish those Instant Pots I used it yesteryear would have had is these silicone mitts. And they are for grabbing the edge of the pot and lifting it out of there when it's hot. I cannot tell you how many times I got burned on that Instant Pot. It does have an extra seal, and I looked in the instructions. I kind of glanced through them to see if maybe this seal was for high pressure or for low pressure, and I couldn't find anything about it because this one is a different color than the one that comes installed in the lid. But at any rate, you have two seals, and I did not see anything in the instructions about it. And of course it comes with instructions, and it comes with a recipe book that actually has some decent recipes in it. I might try some of those. So that's what you get with the pot. And don't forget to enter the drawing that we have on September the 5th to win this. And if you don't win it, be sure and check out the link. We'll put the Amazon link in so you can order one of these if you'd like to get one. This is under really low pressure, and like I said, that's one of the things that I like about this pot is it will cook under pressure, but without getting so much pressure under it, it takes forever to release the lid. To release the pressure, you just turn it over to vent, and it did blow out a little bit of hot water, but not much. There's not much steam at all, and because it's under such low pressure, it will open fairly quickly. I had the pot really, really full too. It probably under that pressure would not have even spit out any hot water if I didn't have it so full. You do have to wait for the little red pressure seal to drop down to get the lid off. It locks it. Mercy, that looks good. Now you can see that our apples are all nice and brown, and that's what you want. Now if you had been cooking this on the stove and stirring it all day long, these apples would have been completely busted up and they would have been really smooth. But because we cooked it in this pot and did not stir it at all, we just let it sit there and cook. I'm going to use a little immersion blender just to smooth it all out really good. You could also use a hand mixer if you wanted to. You could take this out and dump it down in your stand mixer, or take it out and dump it in a blender. It would take a few blender cups blend this all up though, because this is about 6 or 8 pints, 4 quarts of apple butter here. So that's going to fill up a blender a few times. You really need some kind of mixer or one of these little immersion blenders to mix this up. Doesn't take long at all, and that's all there is to mixing it up there. Now at this point it's really thick, and because our pot is still on, it will pop, so watch it like that. I have several spoons here and all my spices to taste, and okay, you hear that? When these pots, the timer goes off, they don't actually cut off. What it will do when it gets done beeping, if I'm not in the room, is it'll just turn on keep warm. And it will keep whatever's in it at a safe temperature, so that when you get to it to check on it, it'll still be hot. It won't have spoiled or anything like that. So if you've got it set for 8 hours, like we set it for our apple butter, and you get busy and you're not in the room and it goes off and you come in an hour after it went off, it's perfectly fine, because it will maintain its temperature and keep your food from spoiling. So anyway, we're going to start tasting and adjusting. I've got extra sugar, I've got all my spices. Definitely still very sour. I have about 3/4 of a cup of white sugar and about 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar here. I'm going to add all of that, and I may still have to get some more. Mine is very sour still. I can't tell if it needs more cinnamon or not. Okay, let me try this. And you're going to have to do this with your apple butter too. It doesn't matter what kind of apple you use. You're going to have to taste it. You're going to have to adjust your sugar and your spices. It may still need a little bit more sugar, but it definitely needs some more spices. It needs a little more of everything. Nutmeg is kind of a medium spice, I guess. I'm going to put about 3/4 of a teaspoon in there maybe. Cloves are a pretty strong spice, so whenever you're spicing something with cloves, you want to be very careful, because it will change the flavor drastically quickly. That's a little bit too much. I'm only going to add about 1/2 teaspoon of cloves. And cinnamon doesn't add quite as much flavor as the clove, or as the nutmeg does. So the cloves are going to change the flavor drastically with just a little. The nutmeg, not quite as strong as the cloves, and then the cinnamon is not as strong as the nutmeg. So I'm going to do a whole teaspoon of cinnamon. Like I said, it does still need some spices for sure. And I really think it needs a little more salt and a little more vanilla too. It may seem strange adding salt to something like apple butter, but it really needs the salt in it. I mean, you could make it without it, but it totally changes the flavor. And I probably added about 1/2 teaspoon. And I'm going to do about a teaspoon of vanilla. And we'll try that and see if it still needs more sugar. You can see as I'm stirring this up, those apple peels, they have completely disintegrated in this. So you really don't have to peel your apples. You can save yourself that time unless, like I said, you're worried about pesticide on them. And most of the pesticide in commercially produced fruit is in the peel. So if you're worried about that, you can peel them. But it's not going to change the texture of your apple butter. And I think it actually adds a little to the flavor if you leave it on there. Okay, let's try this. Yep, that's pretty good. I think we got it. I think that's enough sugar in them. And these wine sap apples, they are very, very sour. And I use 3 cups of white sugar in them, almost, not quite, and almost 3 cups of brown sugar. If you're sweetening it, you can use all brown sugar or you can use all white sugar. It really doesn't matter. It's just your preference, which one you want to use. I got apple butter in my throat. The spices, how spicy you want it, that's kind of to suit your taste too, and you are going to have to adjust it because every apple is different. These pots really take the work out of that all-day process that apple butter used to be. You don't have to stand and stir it and stir it and stir it and stir it. You can just seal it up and let it cook. I like these better than crock pots because the pot in them is easier to get out and clean. It's not as heavy. I mean, the crock pots are pretty heavy, and these do so much more for the same amount of space. So I prefer these over a crock pot, and I really like this one. It's stouter. Like I said, the handle is better. There's less chance of getting burned with a handle. Better than the Instant Pot, and I use those Instant Pots for like 2 years on a pretty much a daily basis at work. So I think these are a little bit nicer, and they may even be a little bit cheaper. This one is the 8 quart, and that's what we're giving away, is an 8 quart, and it retails on Amazon for around $90. So that's not a bad price considering all the stuff it'll do. Give this apple butter a try, especially if you know somebody that's got a tree, because even if the apples are organic like mine, you can cut them up and you can use them in this, and it's a really, really good recipe for that. And it's one of those things that has just been around for forever, and everybody loves homemade apple butter. If you're looking for something for Christmas presents maybe, and you don't want to spend a fortune on them, homemade apple butter makes a great Christmas present. You can put some cute little labels on your jar and give it away at Christmas time. I appreciate you joining us in the Hillbilly Kitchen. Tune in to our very next video because we are going to process this in a water bath canner and give you some of the basics. Actually, we're going to process it in this pot using a water bath canning method. So tune into that video. We'll show you how to save your apple butter so you don't have to eat a gallon of apple butter tonight. And we really appreciate you joining us in the Hillbilly Kitchen. Don't forget to leave your 10 comments to win the pot. And until next time, remember to put God first.